Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that is honestly just wild. Elon Musk's success journey. And look, we're getting right into it.
What if I told you the guy building reusable rockets, running insane AI companies, and totally upending the electric vehicle industry once had to sit down and literally choose between paying his rent or funding his dream? Seriously, we usually just see the end result, right? The billions, the massive headlines, but we totally miss the central irony of how that wealth was actually built. We're going to unpack the severe hardships, the massive risks, and the literal near collapses behind one of the wealthiest people on Earth. Because he didn't just almost go broke once, he faced complete, utter financial ruin twice. I mean, we all know him today as the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, but very few people realize just how incredibly precarious his path actually was to get here.
Okay, let's jump back a bit. Born in Pretoria, South Africa in 1971, Musk was one of those kids who just devoured books. While everyone else was outside playing, he's inside for hours, reading sci-fi and encyclopedias, already dreaming about humans living on Mars. And as a teen wanting to change the world, he figured the US was where the action was. So he moves to Canada with barely any money, basically using it as a strategic stepping stone to eventually get to the States. Fast forward, he makes his way to UPenn, gets his degrees in physics and economics, and then he gets accepted into this incredibly prestigious applied physics PhD program at Stanford. It's the absolute academic dream, right? But 2 days in, 2 days on campus, and he just quits, walks completely away. He already had this crazy high risk tolerance, and he was absolutely convinced that this new thing called the internet was going to change the world way faster and more profoundly than any degree ever could.
And honestly, that hustle started super early. At just 12 years old, he wasn't just reading about tech, he literally taught himself to code. He programmed this entire space-themed video game called Blaster from scratch and actually sold the source code to a PC magazine for about $500. Now, okay, in the grand scheme of his life, $500, not exactly a fortune, but as a signal of what was coming, it was huge. It proved something absolutely crucial really early on. Tangible execution creates real opportunities. He wasn't just sitting around dreaming. He could build a product and actually find someone to buy it. That little taste of turning code into cash, that basically set the blueprint for his whole risk-taking mindset.
So that execution lesson carried right over into his first internet company, Zip2. But man, the reality was not glamorous at all. In those early days of building this online city guide, the struggle was so real. He and his brother were pulling completely grueling hours, just coding nonstop. And because he couldn't afford an apartment, or really a comfortable life at all, he literally lived in his tiny rented office. He's sleeping on a beanbag chair right under his desk. And to take a shower, he had to walk over to the local YMCA. Just think about that contrast for a second. The sheer physical exhaustion of coding all night and scrambling for funding all day, it is just wild to compare that guy to the billionaire we see today.
But eventually, all that insane sacrifice actually pays off. Zip2 gets sold, and bam, he's got his first millions. Most people would just stop right there, totally set for life. But not him. He takes that money and rolls almost the whole thing right into his next grand vision, co-founding X.com, this online bank that eventually merges and becomes PayPal. And when PayPal gets bought by eBay in 2002, the financial whiplash is just staggering. Imagine this, you go from sleeping under a desk and showering at the Y because you can't make rent to suddenly walking away with a payout of over $100 million. In just a few short years, he hits a level of wealth that is honestly hard to even wrap your head around.
Now, I want you to ask yourself, what would you actually do with $100 million? Let's be real. The logical, rational choice for like 99.9% of us is to retire in absolute luxury. Go buy an island, travel the globe, just live in perfect comfort and never work another Tuesday in your life. But Musk, he makes the completely irrational choice to risk it all. Instead of taking the easy road and, protecting that massive pile of cash, he decides to sink practically every single penny into entirely new, completely unproven, and highly volatile industries. He was basically opting to start from zero all over again.
So what exactly does he risk it all on? 3 ideas that honestly seemed impossible at the time: Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity. You really have to put yourself back in the mindset of the early 2000s to get how crazy this sounded. People literally laughed at him. I mean, the aerospace industry, that was totally locked down by massive, government-funded defense contractors with billions behind them. A scrappy private space startup seemed mathematically impossible, and experts were confidently going on record saying private rockets would simply never reach orbit. Meanwhile, the legacy car companies, they firmly believed electric cars were just glorified golf carts that could never replace gas vehicles.
The overwhelming consensus from Silicon Valley all the way to Wall Street was that this guy just got lucky with the internet boom, and now he was foolishly burning his entire fortune on a bunch of sci-fi pipe dreams.
And then came the abyss. 2008 was without a doubt the absolute hardest year of his life. All those impossible ideas were violently colliding with reality, and the timing, it literally could not have been worse. The 2008 global financial crisis hits, markets are crashing, and investment capital essentially evaporates overnight. Tesla is bleeding cash and teetering right on the edge of total bankruptcy. And over at SpaceX, the stakes are just as dark. They had tried to launch their Falcon 1 rocket 3 separate times, and 3 times in a row, they failed. Rockets burning up, crashing into the ocean, and dragging millions and millions of dollars down with them.
We're talking about a genuine existential threat here. One more failure meant it was all over. Musk had poured his massive PayPal fortune into these companies, and now that money was just gone. He actually admitted later that he was completely out of cash, literally borrowing money from friends just to pay his own living expenses, while desperately trying to scrounge up enough to keep his employees paid. If that upcoming 4th rocket failed, or if Tesla missed payroll just one more time, the companies were dead, done forever. His reputation, his dreams, his entire fortune completely wiped off the map.
But instead of just packing it in, declaring bankruptcy and holding on to whatever pennies he had left, he goes all in one last time. He scrapes together literally everything he can find for a final attempt. And then the miracle happens. That 4th SpaceX launch, the one that absolutely, no questions asked, had to work, finally succeeds. It reaches orbit. And because of that massive, undeniable success, NASA steps in and hands SpaceX a life-saving billion-dollar contract to resupply the space station. And right around that exact same time, literally in the final dying hours of 2008, Tesla miraculously secures the critical funding it desperately needed just to keep the factory lights on. That single, terrifyingly brutal year ended up changing the entire trajectory of human technology.
Because that all-in gamble, it paved the way for this sprawling technological empire that is actively reshaping our world right now. By surviving 2008, he built a future where SpaceX became the first private company to regularly send astronauts into orbit. I mean, they developed reusable rocket boosters that literally land themselves backwards on drone ships out in the middle of the ocean. It's wild. That completely flipped the economics of spaceflight on its head. And Tesla didn't just survive, it forced the entire global auto industry to pivot. It turned EVs from a niche joke into an industry-wide mandate and became one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Today, his ventures are pushing the outer boundaries of AI, robotics, global satellite internet, and, circling all the way back, that original childhood dream of making humanity a multi-planetary species. Now, whether you personally agree with his business decisions or not, you have to admit his story leaves us with a pretty profound universal truth. Success isn't about never failing. It is entirely about refusing to quit after you fail. At its core, this billionaire's journey is just a highly relatable lesson on human grit and resilience. Every single great success story has these dark moments that look exactly like catastrophic, irreversible failure. The people who ultimately end up changing the world, they're the ones who face those moments of total collapse and consciously choose to keep moving forward when literally everyone else decides to stop.
Your dream doesn't need perfect timing. It just needs persistence. So the next time you're facing a massive setback or life is giving you every reason to just throw in the towel, remember the guy who almost lost absolutely everything before he went on to build rockets and change the future. I'll leave you with this question to chew on. If all it takes to keep your impossible dream alive is persistence, what's actually stopping you from taking your next big risks today? Keep chasing those dreams, and I'll see you in the next explainer.